In the last episode of this series, we learned from Sarrafian's anatomy of the foot and ankle that though the foot is flexible, it can be changed into a sturdy and rigid structure. This is done through a series of movements that bring the foot into the close pack position. In this position, the bones of the foot are remodeled to have the most surface contact between the joint surfaces. Those joints, which are typically freely movable, start to act as synarthroses, which are joints that do not allow for movement, like the joints between the bones of your skull. The arch on the inside of the foot lowers, lengthening and widening the foot, which stretches the fascia and ligaments in the foot, making them taut. The foot is then ready to be efficiently used as a lever arm. There are a number of movements required to produce the close-packed position in the foot: widening the heels, internally rotating the talus, supinating the talus, pronating the navicular and cuboid, supinating the forefoot, and there were a few more we could list if we wanted to be exhaustive. But how can we use this information? At a basic practical level, we can observe ourselves and see if when we walk, do we keep our heels widened, or do we tend to move them closer together? Most will find that their heels come closer together, and in doing so, the talus is externally rotated. Can you give yourself the direction while you walk to keep your heels apart? And what about when you stop walking? Take a few steps and then stop so that you're standing in a normal standing posture and do not have one foot forward or back. Then check your heels. Have you rotated them in, or have you kept them widened? What's happened with your ankles? Addressing this problem is not just about the feet though, obviously. Let's think back to another problem we've looked at, the lack of abduction in the legs, and especially the backs of the legs. If the backs of your legs come in towards the center of your body, you are going to end up narrowing your heels. So try giving yourself the direction to abduct the insides of the thighs, which means pushing the insides of the thighs apart. In order to make sure we're abducting the backs of the thighs, you want to push the back of the thigh outwards more quickly than the front of the thigh. This will rotate the femur. We can also zoom in on these two movements of the talus, the internal rotation along with supination. As we've seen before in the series about the torso, often movements that seem to contradict each other are necessary. The antagonistic movements are what create the lengthening and stretching of the fascia. Hopefully you've already tried placing your feet in the position that Masoero advises and screwing your ankles. Now, we can be a little bit more precise with how we implement this. We definitely still want to internally rotate the ankles, but we don't want to collapse the ankles in. Instead, we will supinate the talus, which means rotating it outward in this plane. Trying to put all the specific movements listed for the closed pack position is too much for beginners. If you're just starting out with these things, focus on screwing the ankles and keeping the heels widened. Screwing the ankle means internally rotating the ankle so that the outer malleolus comes forward and the inner malleolus goes back until the malleoli and the ankle are 90 degrees to forward. Applying those two adjustments when you walk, or bend down, or stand can make a significant difference. But for those who have some experience, this list of movements for the close pack position of the foot is really a great resource for refining the adjustment of the feet. These various antagonistic movements will help you get the maximum stretch of your fascia. It can be a surprise how rigid and springy the feet can become when they are properly organized. We've learned about how we can increase the bone-on-bone contact of the joint surfaces for the foot and ankle. Sarrafian's focus was just on the foot and ankle. But now let's consider the knee, as there is no reason for us to stop at the ankle. What kind of adjustments to the knee will get us more surface contact between the bones of the joint? We can also begin to think about bending the knees, and thereby bending the legs. What does it mean to bend at your knees? Because if you think about it, when you're standing, you can't just bend the knee joint. You will also end up bending at your ankle joint, or your hip joint, or at all three joints. Do the differences between these ways of bending the knee matter? Experiment with them a little and see what you find. Then join me next episode, and we'll look at bending our knees in a rational way.